Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to start the rest of the program. We're going to bring up our MC, the host of Caravan to Midnight, Mr. John B. Wells.
Ooh, MC John B. Kind of like that. Well, welcome everybody, and of course you've been here. You've been here, most of the day. But it's really good to see you here. And of course, the reason that we are here is to make sure that what happened 53 years ago, this coming Tuesday, is not forgotten. A lot of people, more than we think, knew that something was wrong on that day. They knew that something was wrong with with all the stories that came out after the event. Not very many people bought people repeated it, but they didn't really believe it, that Lee Oswald shot John Kennedy from the school book depository corner window there. And while it's perfectly okay to be, introducing some of the great speakers that are gonna make their presence known and their work during the course of the conference, I'd like to share a couple of things with you. We were all led here by something. If at the very least, it's just curiosity. But I think it's a little bit more than that. Because as you look around and you see the people around you, and I've met and talked with just a few. This one at the conference last year and the conference before that. I guess it all started for me on the 50th anniversary. 53 years ago, this coming Tuesday. You find that there is, many of the people sitting here have some stories to tell. And their observations, and some of them are there. In other words, we're not all spectators. We're actually all participants, whether we were willing to be participants or not. I mean, we are participants in history. So back to that being led into a thing, you never know where your fate lies. You never know what the future holds. I think we can all agree that we don't really know where we're going to be 10 minutes from now. We can make a good guess, and probably it'll be what we guess, but maybe not. But it started for me in about 1960. As a matter of fact, this past Sunday, I decided to take a tour down memory lane, and I drove over to Arlington, Texas. And I drove over there with my lovely fiance, Brendy Richards, the author of the blog, The Truth About South Africa. And we pulled up to Abrams and Proctor, right there in West Arlington. And I said, this is where my house sat when I was a little kid. And right there, and this house is still standing, and there's a little garage apartment now. Of course, it looks like, as my son described that area of town when he was about 8 years old, it looks like it was hit by an atomic bomb and nobody knows it, which I thought was really a pretty good description. But now it's getting gentrified, and the fields that we used to pick berries from and hunt a rabbit with your pellet gun, something, because the TV was all about self-reliance, and it was cowboys in World War II and being manly and all of that stuff. So we'd get our pellet guns, go out there and take a rabbit. Of course, then we had no idea what to do with it, so we'd go to our parents and go, how do I prepare this? I've just brought a rabbit home for dinner. Well, anyway, this house that was standing next to this lot where my house once stood, this house was owned by a real estate lady named Helen Wessler. And they even have a little park in Arlington, Texas, I think it's still there, that was dedicated to her, named Wessler Park. And lo and behold, one afternoon, I was just out there in the backyard, and my mom was there. And Mrs. Wessler, she was quite elderly at the time. She must have been pushing 90 back in 1960. So she had seen a lot over the course of her life, and she had a private nurse. And the nurse's name was Marguerite Oswald. Yep, true story. And, I could never join Mensa, but in my defense, I say that Mensa doesn't measure intuition. And that's what I've run on my whole life. The numbers don't lie, but sometimes I can't put the numbers together. Sometimes there aren't any numbers, but sometimes there is intuition. You just know something. Sometimes you know things that you don't really know what it is you know, but you sense that you do. So time went by, and a few visits there in the yard with Mrs. Oswald, and she only mentioned her son Lee one time. But there was something that struck me even as a little kid, that's for some reason I thought this is significant. Well, we then went over to East Fort Worth, and we went to Meadowbrook Elementary School. And I said, right over there is where I was standing when the bell rang early to bring us in from recess. And I thought, I wonder what's going on. I had to watch in those days. My dad insisted. First word he ever forced me to learn how to spell was Constitution. I thought that was kind of prophetic in a way. He was always doing that stuff. Today we're going to learn multiplication tables. I want you to learn how to multiply 9 all the way up through 9. Okay? But he did that. Anyway. So we went in early that day. 22nd November, 1963. I remember it as clearly as it was the day before yesterday. It was a bright, sunshiny day. The air was really crisp, kind of like it's getting to be outside now with this little temperature change. And the public address system in every classroom. The principal came on. Mr. Young drove a 64 and a half Ford Mustang, lived right across the street on Meadowbrook Drive from the elementary school. It was amazing. I mean, this looked like a little model railroad town in those days. Now it looks like, well, an atomic bomb hit it. But, and there was a threat of that, of course, every day back in those years. Boom, boom. And they finally quit doing that when the cows quit giving milk. The thing that struck me as odd, the next poignant moment was when Mr. Young made the announcement that President Kennedy had been shot in Dallas. The boys in the 6th grade class down the hall cheered. A big cheer went up. And even as a kid, I thought, something kiddie-like, but it equated to, what the hell? Now, in those days, some of us are old enough to remember this, President Kennedy was just a kind of a wild card. People thought his hair was too long. And even as a little kid, when I heard Marilyn Monroe sing Happy Birthday, Mr. President, I thought, oh, wait, something's going on with those. That's just not normal. It's really not. So we let that go. And I write, a couple of years later, 7th grade came along, and I wrote this little thing because by now Jack Ruby's gone, and Lee's gone, of course, and Vietnam is underway. It's amazing how quick we got that Vietnam thing underway. Boom. President Kennedy's gone in November of '63, and here we go into Vietnam. Here we come in April of '64, right? Gulf of Tonkin. Well, it's been shown that that's never happened. But then, some years go by, and I wound up working at a radio station in Dallas called KZUW-FM, the old zoo. And I'd run out of gas on this Harley Davidson that I had, and a guy on an identical motorcycle except for the carburetor, he had an S&S on his. I still had the old key in. And he goes, "What's the matter?" I said, "I ran out of gas." I said, "Not a problem, I'll go over and get you something." And he did, and he was back remarkably quickly. And I said, "You really saved me on this one. If you steak and beers on me, thank you very, very much. You know, I work at this radio station down here." And so he came over a couple of days later, and he said, "You know what I really want to do? I want to go over to Dealey Plaza." So we did. We just rode our motorcycles over there and pulled right up behind it. No big deal, no ceremony, no guards, no nothing. Just a building standing there with a parking lot behind it. Nothing official about it, nothing. I want you all to know this because, I mean, I'm shooting you straight on this. You have only my word for it, but I'm giving it to you. Now, supposedly Mr. Mars, Jim Mars, an intrepid researcher who taught a course on the Kennedy assassination at UT Arlington for several years, has architectural drawings or blueprints or something from the city. I do not. But what we saw, Damon and I, It's that triple underpass, there's a balustrade that goes across, a little decorative balustrade, right? This balustrade continued up toward the school book depository, and it terminated in an area not much bigger than where I am standing. These two panels right here, from here, maybe a little more, maybe about a foot more. The first thing that got my attention is right on the floor, right in the middle, is a square about this big. And there's no cover on it. And as I looked at it, there were these U-shaped rungs, about that big around, sunk into the wall as a ladder. And I'm thinking to myself, nobody's ever mentioned this. Nobody's ever said anything that I've ever heard about this place right here. Cut a long story short, you talk about the ultimate sniper nest, I began thinking now, and as I looked at Elm Street, which as you probably know is the street closest to the depository, it's a one-way street there, and I'm thinking, that's that storm drain that the motorcycle cop had his bike laid over in the street, and he's looking down the storm drain. You've all seen that, haven't you? Everybody's seen it. I mean, every time there's any kind of a retrospective on that event, you always see that Harley laying over in the street, policeman looking down the storm drain. That storm drain connected to that shaft that I was looking at. I was dropping stuff down there, little bits of pebbles, and I had some wooden matches, and I couldn't get any satisfaction from that. I did not climb down the thing. But what I did then, I just decided that is connected to that. Maybe he heard something come, maybe he thought he heard sound come out of the storm drain, I don't know. But as I looked up at the oncoming traffic of Elm, they've graded and resurfaced over and over and over again, so a lot of the angle has been taken out, it's been smoothed over a little bit. But what I saw, if you were sitting where I was, the cars were coming toward me, and then there was a little curve, and then just at the perfect spot where John Kennedy was hit, the road straightened up. It wasn't much of a curve, but it was a little curve, and I'm looking at this going, and I'm looking at the cars coming, and I see that where he was sitting, passenger side rear, perfect shot. And not only that, the way the car was descending, you could see, in fact, a convertible came by, and I saw that the person's head was actually visible above the upper edge of the windshield. I thought, okay, now we go to the Zapruder film, right? We see John Kennedy do this, and then this. And I'm thinking to myself, this is easy. You're down there, and you hear on your radio, 100 yards, get in position. Okay? Your rifle has already got one jacked up at the spout, your safety's on, you swing it over your shoulder, climb up those rungs, 20 seconds, comes over your radio. I mean, I'm making this up, right? Unsling, sling up. All right, he's at the corner. Here we go. As soon as he's in position, boom, boom. That's enough for 2 shots, right? Last year at the conference, I cannot recall the man's name. I can't, it's on record though. He was part of the autopsy crew. And some people came up to a microphone like that one and to ask him some questions. I was the last in line because I was going to bring on the next speaker. And I asked him, you've done a lot of autopsies. I said, yeah. I said, a dozen? Oh, yeah. A hole in the president's throat. But it wasn't a tracheotomy hole. That's supposed to be vertical. You said this hole is horizontal. Yes. Exit wound? No. So you work these autopsies and you've seen gunshot wounds. You know what they look like. Yes, is what he said. And then he went into the story about a guy in a pickup truck, and he'd been shot in the head, and the back of his head was gooey. Sorry about this, but that's what he said. Something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing, but not much. And so the story goes on for a couple minutes, and I'm going, okay. Where the president's head was blown out, the back was blown out, yes? Yes. Brains, bone, everything, right? Yes. Where was the entry wound? You know what he said? Were you there last year? Who was here last year for the conference? Do you remember what he said? He said, well, I wasn't going to go there. Remember that one? At that point I said, well, I think we need to if we're going to show he was shot from the front. And he said, about an inch below the hairline, and got off the stage. And you remember that little guy, I can't remember, it was assistant district attorney or somebody, remember he did this in the old footage right up there? Okay, so here's the thing, this is what we know now. World War I was a setup. The Germans tried to place ads in American newspapers saying, do not sail these routes, do not book passage on these ships. American newspapers wouldn't run. America didn't want into World War I. Got pulled into it anyway for 1 year, lost a lot of people. World War II, my dad, his own letters. Well, the ships go out and stay for about 2 weeks, then come in for about 2 weeks, then go out for another 2 weeks. Like, that's why the carriers weren't there. And we went through this whole thing on Caravan to Midnight about how FDR knew that was coming and then took 4 steps to cover it up. Korean War, I don't know. That's a different deal. That's dealing with the Asians. And just like MacArthur said, if you decide to take on the Asians, you better be prepared for the long haul because they are. So I don't know about that. That's not my area of expertise at all. But we know about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. We know that it was a false flag. And what happened? 11 years. We go from 64 to 75, we're in Vietnam. War on poverty, more poverty. War on drugs, more drugs. War on terror, more terror. We know that these people have covered things up repeatedly over the years. We didn't want to believe it. It was sickening to us to think that they would do this to us, but they did. And now it's undeniable. First time that I spoke to Judith Berry Baker, I said, Judith, I want to talk to you just like a couple of people talking here, instead of some, stage, like written down questions to ask you. She said, I would prefer it that way. I said, okay, here's number one. You ready? She said, yeah. I said, Lee Harvey Oswald, CIA officer, yes or no? She said, yes. How does a United States Marine radar specialist defect to the Soviet Union at the height of the Cold War and then come back with his wife? No Leavenworth, no nothing, just pictures of Lee on film registering to vote with the black folk. Oh, what a pariah. Oh, look, he's got posters that say fair play for Cuba on them. Oh, how'd you do that? It was a setup. Why is Jew the Baker involved? She wants the guy that she loves. She wants his name cleared. Because a lot of people still think Lee Harvey Oswald was the lone gunman. Well, no, he wasn't. There's lead flying all over the place out there, and everybody knows it. So, here we are. And it is a testament to, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but I think it's a testament to the quest for truth. We can take the truth. What we can't take is this continual propaganda. It's now legal to propagandize, as they've been doing it for years anyway, but now it's completely legal as of 2013. The National Defense Authorization Act, any of us can be arrested, held without charges, without a lawyer, no phone call, nobody knows where you are, indefinitely. In other words, until Hades freezes over, until Satan himself has got an ice cream stand, they can hold you that long, and there's nothing you can do about it. Nothing you can do about it. Right now, they've got, I still call them Indians. I call them originals, you can call them Native Americans, whatever you want. They got the Indians up there in Dakota. They're putting them in dog cages. They're shooting at them with rubber bullets and stuff. Over this pipeline deal, there have been numerous spills up there, numerous pipeline bursts. They've only reported one. And there were 40 some, I can't remember the number, but it was a lot of them because I did a news story out the other day. I mean, the memories come in and the memories go out, the news feed. So, look, I just want to applaud you for being here. Why are you here? You had nothing else to do? Of course you did. You got lots of stuff to do, but you wanted to be here. And I got to tell you, it just almost makes me emotional to see you here because you want the truth. And I'm thinking it doesn't really much matter to you what it costs to get it. You want it. You want it because it's important. You want it because you don't want generations of our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, sorry about that, I keep doing that, don't I? Live in a lie, because that's what it was a lie. It was a setup to go to Vietnam. And who made money? A military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned us about. Don't let the military-industrial complex and the politicians in Washington start sleeping together. If you do, there's trouble. And the man looks scared to death. If you look at that farewell speech, you will see it's almost like, oh my God, I wish I could tell you all that I know, but I just can't. And then what happened to Ike? Just kind of faded away. So, I am delighted to be among you. I'm delighted to be one of you. I am delighted that there is still an interest in making sure that future generations know the truth about this, but more than that the world knows that there's a very small percentage of people that participated in the American Revolution. Some didn't want to participate at all. Others were for the British. But for the ones who said, no, we're gonna split from England and we're gonna start our own country, that's a small percentage. We're looking at the small percentage now who will show up at a conference like this to carry these stories that you hear from these fabulous speakers, and a lot of them who have devoted decades in some cases their entire lives, their entire adult lives to researching this, so that freedom can exist, so that freedom is not just some marketing word. You notice I've said this many times on the Caravan of Midnight, that every dictator of every little banana republic up to sophisticated, complicated societies, whenever they want to take over something, what's the one word they use? Freedom. They're freedom fighters. Well, I'll tell you something. You're the freedom fighters. And so I think I'll just give you a hand. And I think you should give each other a hand for being here. For honoring our fallen president and for searching for the truth. I just want to put you wise to a couple of things that are coming up. John Barber, Garrison Tapes 2, Texas Theater, Monday, 3 p.m. Now there's another one too.
It's 1 p.m., John.
Oh, I'm sorry, it says 3.
1 to 3, and then from 3 to 5:30, we're having a question and answer with John.
Okay, what's my stenographer? Sorry.
Well, I worked on it, I'm sorry.
Okay, good. So it's 1 to 3 on Monday, yeah?
Correct.
All right. And that's at Garrison Tapes 2. And then from 7 to 9 at the Texas Theater, Randolph Benson produced and directed The Searchers, Portrait of the Assassination Research Community. All right, an amazing movie, both of them. And then on Monday, there's a Roger Stone meet and greet, the book signing event, the Omni Hotel, the Spice Room at 6:30 p.m. Judith Baker will be there. Please come prepared to purchase a book. I'm sure Mr. Stone would insist, and he's a really good writer. So there's some activities for you. And I thank you very much for your time. And again, thank you for being here. It's important.
What did Marguerite say about leaves? You never told us what Marguerite said about leaves.
It's a pleasant sound, isn't it? Okay. Say, how about you anyway? Is she something or is she something? Seriously. This intrepid, dogged researcher saved everything. I just want to wrap up real quick. I didn't realize, because I got lost in the wonder of it all, that I actually exceeded my allotted time to speak to you earlier tonight, about double. So I won't do it again, I promise. But there's a little bit more to that story. Long about 1985 or 6, I was on a street that everybody misspelled and mispronounced. The street is Swannanoa. S-W-A-N-A-N-O-A-H. We used to get mail there to Swanee and Shenandoah and everything else. It was actually Swannanoa. And one day, this character, this is not to be construed with a Macho Man story. I was just like this in those days. It was a nice street, no curbs, just the street, and then the next thing you knew, there was the yard of the houses up and down, right? And it was long about this time that I met one of my neighbors up the street. And it was because there was this guy in the backyard, in my backyard. I was having a cup of tea about 4 o'clock talking to a friend of mine. I said, hold on a second, Brandon. There's a really big guy in the backyard. It looks like he's carrying somebody's TV set. So I got the negotiating instrument of my choice, which in those days was this AK. And I went back there and, I explained to the officer later that night that exercising proper fire control, I let off about 9 of them into the dirt back there, and he did a backflip over the fence. Because when he turned around, I thought he had a gun. But it turned out to be this little short umbrella. Well, the neighborhood was quite excited about this. A real crime buster, And I met this guy named Daniel. Guess who his roommate was? This is a strange deal. And Daniel was kind of a strange cat. Well, not strange, but just an unusual guy. He spoke 2 or 3 languages, and he was in the import-export business. And he happened to have become a roommate of one General Edwin A. Walker, 5 houses up from where I am living. So I met General Walker, and of course I expect to hear it. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with him, he was shot at supposedly by Lee Oswald in April of '63 for the assassination and was of John Kennedy. And I do not know and cannot tell you at this moment, because this is not coming from prepared notes. This is just what happened. I don't know whether it was Highland Park that arrested him or Dallas. I think it might have been Highland Park. But in any case, it was, wasn't it? Okay, General Edwin A. Walker told me that the call that released Lee Harvey Oswald from the Hooskow came from not his office, but Bobby Kennedy himself. That is what General Walker told me. It was while living on this same street that I saw an article about that big in the Dallas Morning News announcing that Oliver Stone was coming to Dallas to do a picture about JFK. And I thought, I think I better get a camera and get over to that spot by the school book depository and get a picture. So I fooled around with it for about 2 weeks. And I finally grabbed the old Minolta, the vintage Minolta with the big old lens on it. Hooked them up, went down to the school book depository, and guess what I saw? Nothing. It was gone. The moment that article came out, that little garden area with the hatch in the floor and all that was completely erased. It was black topped over, and there was not a trace that it had ever been there. If you go down there now, I'm sure you may already know this, but that storm drain cover, where the policeman has his motorcycle laid over, was looking down into the storm drain, it's been welded in 4 places. You can't open the cover now. That's it. See you a little bit. Let's see, sunrise tomorrow is 7:01. I'll see you 59 minutes after sunrise tomorrow at 8 o'clock sharp, okay? Thanks very much for being here. God bless. Take care. Well, happy Saturday midday, everybody. Not everybody got here exactly early in the morning. Some of us had 100 million tons of iron in front of us. So anyway, it's good to be with you. And of course, welcome to people joining us on the live stream. So we're about to get this party rolling some more. I did have a couple of things to add, because some of my stories, just according to some people, I don't know how accurate this is, but according to some people, some of my stories just take forever to get through. But there were a couple of other things that I wanted to bring up. And it's that, going back to these little breadcrumbs that were scattered, making this trail, this John F. Kennedy assassination conspiracy busting. See, this is not a conspiracy theory. Would you agree? This is an actual conspiracy. So this is not conspiracy theory. This is lie detection. You like that one? I kind of like it. Right down the street at the corner of East Lancaster Avenue and Sandy Lane is Rose Hill Memorial Cemetery. And I thought it was very interesting that that's where Lee Harvey Oswald was laid to rest. So that was in my neighborhood. And then I told you the part about the little garden area being removed 2 weeks after the notice was put in the Dallas Morning News that Oliver Stone was coming to make his movie here in Dallas. Well, I wound up being cast in the role of what was supposed to be Dan Rather. So when the movie, I'm serious. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, congratulations.
Yeah, but well, there's a good part to this, right? Yeah, when I heard this, Oliver wants you to do this. It was like, okay, all right. So when the movie begins, when Oliver's picture starts rolling, that's me doing the narration about the president's body was taken here and blah, 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 all of that. But if you look at the credits on that picture, you will see 2 names are missing. Dan Rather's and mine. Praise the Lord. So I'm okay to be a part of it, all right? But at a distance. All right, let's see here. What do we got? We have Judith Baker is going to deliver a short message about, I can't read this handwriting. at all. I'm gonna let Gary do this. In a minute, Gary Pan's gonna come up and make some introductions. But anyway, that's the whole thing. I've sort of got the same role here that I had in the JFK picture. I'm here and you're here, so welcome, and let's just get it rolling, all right? Here we go. This is Gary Pan.